Hey everybody, I'm Beej and welcome back to my channel Beej Free, where every day I'm trying to transport myself back to 1973. In today's video, we're going to be working with McCall's pattern 3800. Specifically today, we're going to be making this pants, vest, and shirt combo here. And I am really excited to make this. I have some amazing fabrics that I'm ready to work with. But here's the deal though. I have exactly this weekend, like only this weekend, to get this project done. So I am trying to sew 3 garments of clothing in about 36 hours. And it's probably more than I can handle, but to be honest, I mean, most of the fabric I think I can do on my straight machine. It should go through really quick. I don't think I have a lot of hemming. The shirt probably has some hemming, but it should be pretty minimal on the hand sewing. I think most of it can be done on a machine. So we're going to speed run this. We're going to Project Runway this. We are going to get this done in 36 hours.
And nothing can go wrong. Oh no, it all went wrong.
So I'm back again. What happened? Well, I spent all day sewing and making videos, and I was really fighting with this pair of pants. I only had enough fabric for one attempt, and I did everything I could to make these fit. The thing is, I had a mock-up. I made a mock-up like a year ago, but instead of tracing the actual mock-up, I made the mistake of thinking that the pattern was closer to the size that I needed than the mock-up. I didn't think the mock-up was needed. It was. I got them close to fitting, but not enough for me to be happy with it. Then I decided to finally check the videos I had been making. I had been storytelling and tutorials and talking and making videos for Instagram, and turns out the mic had been turned off for hours. 28 videos without sound. On top of all that, I went to transition to either of the other garments that I had cut out. I had a shirt, I had that vest. Really excited about both of those, and they were also cut too small. Apparently, when I wrote on the pattern envelope that everything was sized up correctly, I had gotten it mixed up with a different pattern. Feeling devastated, I decided to walk away from it all. Someday I will finish this set, I will make the video to go along with it, and it will probably end up being a giveaway. For now, I do have a quick project to show off. This is going to be Butterick 3319. The 70s didn't have a lot of variety in hats. It wasn't a big hat year, not like the 50s and the 30s and all that. But what they did have was bucket hats. And so I decided that I wanted to make a bucket hat. I had just enough of the fabric from the pants, and I was able to cut it out. And so we'll just kind of show you real quick and walk you through the making of this hat pattern. Like I said, I had just enough of the red striped fabric from the pants to go ahead and cut out this bucket hat. I also found this other red fabric to use as the lining, just enough of that. I will say it's really funny, this hat pattern, because the brim of the hat, when you cut it flat, it looks just like a toilet bowl seat. This red fabric you'll probably actually see again. I think I have plans of using it to make a skirt at some point. I've not ever sewn a bucket hat before, and so I wanted to make sure I followed the instructions step by step. This pattern has 5 steps to it: the crown, the lining, joining the lining to the crown, the brim, and then the finishing steps. I'm gonna be really honest here. I was having a hard time telling the difference between the number 1 sections and the number 2 sections. I think there's a slight change in angle, but even when you held the pattern pieces up together, they're almost identical. To make the stitching easier, I went ahead and pinned my section 1s together and my section 2s together for both the lining and the outside fabric. Then I took it all to the machine. Step 1, stitch crown 1 section together to large dot. Stitch again 1/4 inch from first stitching. Trim seams close to stitching and press to one side as shown. Stitch, trim, and press crown 2 sections, same as crown 1 sections. Stitch crown sections together in one continuous stitching. Stitch again 1/4 inch from first stitching. Trim close to second stitching. Press seams as shown. If necessary, trim excess fabric near large dot. Step 2, lining. Prepare lining 1 and lining 2 same as crown, pressing seams as shown. Pro tip, if you're sewing something with a lining, sew that first. That way, if you mess up, it's not as critical and you don't waste as much time seam ripping. And when a pattern calls for top stitching, that means you are sewing on top or on the outside of the garment. Now this pattern didn't necessarily say top stitching, it just said stitch again. And so at first I stitched again from the inside, but it really looked much better when I stitched from the outside in a top stitching manner. So let's recap the sewing pattern real quick here. You're going to take 6 slightly rounded triangles. Multiply that by 2 if you're doing a lining. Sew each of those into 4 sections. 2 outside sections, 2 lining sections. Each section has 3 triangles. Then sew the 2 outside sections together to make 1 circle, and the 2 inside sections together to make the second circle. Step 3. Joining lining to crown. With wrong sides together, pin lining to crown, matching seams. Baste raw edges together. Tack lining to crown at large dot. I didn't get this part on camera, but wanted to read off the instructions for anyone who's following along. Stitching the brim was definitely the part I was most excited about. I have a slight obsession with top stitching, and I also love quilting. I mean, I've never actually fully made a quilt, but the idea of just kind of following along and not sewing things together necessarily, but adding decoration, I really like that. And so this was a lot of fun just doing circle after circle after circle. Step 4, brim. Baste interfacing to wrong side of brim section. Stay stitch single notched edge. To stay stitch, stitch 1/8 from seam line in seam allowance. Stitch center back seam, trim interfacing close to stitching. Stay stitch notched curve edge and stitch center back seam in remaining brim section. With right sides together, stitch brim sections together along unnotched edge. Trim. Turn right side out, press, baste raw edges together. Top stitch 8 rows of stitching on brim. Interfaced side up, 1/4 from finished edge and 1/4 apart. With right sides together, pin brim, interfaced side down to crown. Stitch trim seam to 1/4 inch. At the time that I was working on this, I didn't have any extra interfacing and was really debating if that was going to be a problem or not. I thought about using an extra layer of fabric as a stiffener and then decided against it. Overall, with just the lining and the outside fabric and all the stitching, I think the brim is plenty stiff enough without the extra interfacing. Honestly, the instructions make stitching the brim seem much more complicated than it actually was. The basics are you take the lining and the outside fabric and stitch them together along the outside edge and turn. This gives you a nice finish on both sides. From there, just start doing your top stitching circles, all about 1/4 inch apart, as it said. Once you have all that sewn together, then you just attach it to the crown of the hat. Step 5. Finishing. Pin one long edge of ribbon along seam line at lower edge of brim, turning in and lapping one end at center back. Stitch close to edge of ribbon. Slip stitch ends, turn ribbon and seam allowance towards crown. Tack loosely at seams if desired. Instead of ribbon, I actually used bias tape, and probably a thicker bias tape than I needed to, but I just used what was available. I sewed that around the seam as close as possible to the seam where I attached the brim to the crown, and then I went back and hand sewed it on the inside, whip stitched it down into place for a nice clean finish. So that's a wrap on the bucket hat and on this video. Here's the final product, and to be completely honest, it doesn't fit either. The pattern said one size. It only comes in one size. I know now, and I will make another one. I know that I need to just kind of add a little bit of extra seam allowance. The pattern said a 5/8 seam allowance, and that definitely was too small. If you liked what you saw this month, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, stir up a little bit of hype. As I said, there may be another video with some of these patterns again. There might even be a giveaway at some point, so make sure to click that subscribe button. Anyways, I am Beej, that's B-E-J-G. This is my channel, Beej Free, and tune in next month. signing off.